For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and today I am joined by Jim Ferguson and Scarlett Karoleva from the secret location within the Netherlands. How are both of you doing this morning?
Well, reporting live from the safe house and all is going well. It's always good to be with you and our fellow thought criminals, of course.
Lovely to be here. You're in the secret bunker.
Yeah. Well, you might want to be, considering everything that's shaken loose over the last 24 hours and what's expected over the next 24 hours. Things are getting a little crazy here and around the world. And I guess before we jump into things, could you both give our audience a little bit of a background on who you are and what brought you here today?
Well, Mike, I'm Scarlett Karoleva. I used to work in the European Parliament. That's how I got first-handed to see what a terrible tyranny it is, how it's actually robbing us from all our freedoms, how there's no checks and balances. And I'm deeply passionate to bring those checks and balances back because they're taking all our freedoms away. They get away with it, and it's game over. We're just pushing back against the globalists. And I got the pleasure of meeting you during the Make Europe Great Again conference last January already, which is, I think, I would really love to share with our fellow thought criminals. Europe is awakening. We are rising up. People are fed up with the globalists, with the Euro federalists, and country by country, we are pushing back against the globalists.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Ferguson. I'm a businessman, former parliamentary candidate with the Brexit Party. I work closely with Nigel Farage and his team. I'm the founder of Freedom Train International, which is now the fastest growing and largest freedom movement in the world, modeled after the Tea Party in America, with hundreds of thousands of members. And we have ambassadors in New Zealand, Australia, Denmark, Germany, Norway, the UK, and multiple Canadian ambassadors now as well. We've been traveling to Romania over the last 3 to 4 weeks. Romania, we've been in Budapest, CPAC, Hungary. I've been to Cork in Ireland on a mass demonstration there. And then I flew into Paris. And now I'm in the Netherlands. So it's been a bit of a huge whistle-stop tour, uniting patriots. I was very honored and privileged to meet Marine Le Pen when I was in France at the National Assembly, and be making a lot of contacts, building networks across Europe and beyond. And I'm delighted to be with our American friends today.
Well, that's maybe nice to mention as well, because we both are in Paris, and the reason we went there is because the Patriots for Europe group, which is a group of the Patriots, as the name already says, they are together in the European Parliament trying to bring some common sense. They had actually a conference, and there was Viktor Orban, Marine Le Pen, Bardella, Salvini, like the top of the Conservative and Patriots came together. What was even more beautiful is that we were surrounded by 6,000 French Patriots. Everywhere we looked, we saw the French flag. I didn't even see one European flag, and I'm sure if I would have seen it, it would have been burned. And these are all just regularly people like you and I, unless like what the mainstream media always wants to picture is that they're the bad guys. These are
Yeah.
simply people that love their country. They want to have a dignity and a life with dignity, and they want to maintain their freedoms.
Well, you both really are truly doing the Lord's work over there, because I agree completely that is what we need, is a united freedom movement across the world, really, to set our agenda and to counteract the globalists, the leftists that are destroying nations country by country with progressive policies, and essentially enslaving the people, the natives there, as you guys have forced to deal with open borders like we were here, and the consequences of that. And some of that may lead to more immediate consequences in the near future. Now, I also want to mention before we jump into our first story, I was with your fellow thought criminal last weekend. Rob Roos was in the U.S. and Virginia at an event I attended over there. We did a great interview with him. And it's actually, I think it's up on Sharona Bishop's channel from I can't remember if it was Monday or Wednesday, but it'll be up from one of those 2 days earlier this week. I think she'll have some more interviews from that event going up later on today. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it, because last night this was kind of last night here, this was really unexpected. I got a call from Annie Cyrus 12 minutes after this started, after the bombs started falling. But Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities, kills top commanders. Trump administration emphasizes we were not involved. And this is still a shifting story here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the next couple headlines. They're all kind of aligned. Oops. Sorry, my screen's going a little crazy here. Iran says Israel killed its top terrorist commander in airstrikes, and over 200 Israeli warplanes used against Iran. Trump warns even more brutal attacks coming without a nuclear deal. Why are you guys seeing something different than I am? Sorry, my computer is not responding the way it's supposed to all of a sudden. We'll get that.
Are attacking you, Mike.
Yeah, already. Well, we'll get that resolved here in a second. But yeah, this is really a huge deal. It's a much bigger... this could lead to a lot. Israel's already moving, closing down their embassies. There have been warnings of retaliation attacks. And one of my big concerns, especially for a lot of you guys over in Europe, specifically Paris, London, and other cities, probably most of Germany, where they've had open borders, unfettered immigration for years. We've already seen in the past where Islamists will gather in the streets. It'll start off as a protest, and then quickly turn into a riot. And before you know it, we've got 5 days of Paris getting burned down. Are we hearing any signs of protests being planned yet, or is this something that we'll probably see unfold over the weekend?
Well, I think it's inevitable. I would make a prediction, not that we've had any intel coming in as such. We're not connected to those far left organizations where you would get that kind of information, although we do know others who are. But I think it's almost inevitable that we will see the preparations being made within the next few hours, next 24 to 48 hours. And we will see the Palestinian flags out en masse, shouting at everybody. It's expected. We know that. So what I would be looking for our governments to do is to have a fairly brutal crackdown on it. Mass arrests, deportations, any students involved immediately have their passports revoked and sent back to their countries of origin. I think it's time for the lions to roar. It's time to say enough is enough. We're not going to have this anymore.
I agree.
What we shouldn't forget is that in Europe, all those NGOs, the Muslim Brotherhood, are so well established. Just a couple of weeks ago, we found out how well integrated the Muslim Brotherhood is, founded by the Saudis and the Qataris. They already have those structures.
Yeah.
They're already within the government. They're lobbying for their policies. And let's not forget, if it's not the Muslim Brotherhood, it's their own people. The European Commission has funded in millions, if not billions, what we know so far, into both NGOs and also researchers how they can turn Europe into an Islamic continent.
Caliphate.
So
Yeah.
the problem is that they are here. They're very well organized. They're within every institute. And for them to mobilize and go out and protest, and those protests are very likely to escalate, it's just a matter of time.
Yes, and I agree, and I think unfortunately, especially with the European Union is extremely pro-Islamist, Israel, anti-Jew. Really, it's that sentiment has only spread throughout the people, especially they see this conflict as a battle of oppressor versus oppressed, and immediately side against Israel in all aspects. And again, like, I don't want to get involved in any kind of ground war in Iran, but this really is cutting off the head of the snake. They are essentially the money laundering organization or the bank for most of these terrorist entities, from the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, Al Qaeda, to name your poison. They're all essentially they're just different flavors of the same terrible ice cream. They're all the same thing, being financed and really orchestrated out of Tehran. I don't know that this is enough to sort of cut the head off that snake, but it is a good first step. But there's going to be retaliation. There's going to be consequences for this. And I imagine they're probably going to be seen throughout Europe, because they want to use terrorism to leverage against Israel. Basically, this isn't, the violence won't stop until you're compliant and you stop supporting Israel, is essentially the method they're going to take. I mean, am I missing anything here, or is it kind of what you guys are expecting as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think once again, we have our governments deeply infiltrated by
Yes.
globalists, not just the World Economic Forum. There are many of them, the Council of 300, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, but they all follow one same agenda, a one world government where they are in full control. This mass destabilization of illegal immigration is being done by design. And
Yes.
it's been done to cause and sow chaos. Thankfully, President Trump got elected. You dodged a bullet with Kamala Harris, and made no
Yes.
mistake. Never made any bones about it. I fully back President Trump and his administration. But of course, there's a lot going on: Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, Russia. There's a lot happening, and of course, this latest attack on Iran is very, very serious. There will be no doubt reprisals, but we have to stand firm in the face of this intimidation that's likely to come in. Once again, they will have game planned this to sow as much confusion and chaos
Yeah.
and fear as
Yeah.
possible.
And it really does illustrate the danger from the red-green axis, this alliance between the socialists, the communists, and the Islamists. Because they're going to be encouraging more of this in the street. You're going to see their foot soldiers standing next to the Islamists while they're out there protesting, especially when things turn violent. That's when you're going to see all the black blocs show up, people masked up, looting, breaking into businesses and burning down the city. It really is holding the world hostage unless they capitulate and move forward with their agenda, which you are finally starting to see some real pushback across Europe for the mass migration and what it's done to every country's culture individually. We're going to get to Ireland here in just a little bit, but we've seen this over and over and over again in the major cities across Europe, and the people are finally getting sick of it. They're standing up. They're sick of the knife attacks. They're sick of the grenade attacks. They're sick of everything else that goes on. Well, the government makes excuses for it and stands against the native people and with the boat migrants, the Islamists that have come up from Syria and everywhere else, and are destroying a lot of these your countries. If there's major attacks, would this finally be enough to turn some of these governments back to where they would fight for the people? Or do you think you'd just see kind of empty action to capitulate for a little while, hoping to bide more time? Because unfortunately, I think what they really want is a divided people, because that's easier to control. And that's basically what they have now that they've imported so many people.
Yeah, of course, we see it in Europe, of course, as well. Today was announced that Ursula von der Leyen is sending 1 billion more to Ukraine. Nobody is checking where that money is going. We know this is a money laundering process, actually. We're paying for it without any checks and balances, without any transparency, but they benefit from war. And even more so in the Netherlands, there was actually today decided on to increase the budget for NATO, which of course is good, but let's not forget that NATO is in itself extremely corrupt. Unless we actually fix that corruption within NATO itself, that money will not go to defense as it should be. It is going into the pockets of people that benefit from it. We need to
Yep.
fix those issues first before, because it's costing the Dutch taxpayers between 60 to 19 billion in addition, extra money. But the thing is, what they want in the end is to have that chaos so they
Hmm.
can turn it into a war economy. What does war economy mean? War economy means total control. That means that at any moment, whatever is your belongings can be taken from you because they will say, oh, we'll need it for the war, we'll need it for defense. So make it sure that it's, packaged in a nice ribbon so you're in favor of it because that's how they manipulate us. They use words that you're like, oh, but this is actually something positive. No, it's a way to grab more control and rob us from our freedoms. And that's what we're seeing in Europe right now.
I think you made a very good point. Will this finally overturn what's going on? We've seen scenes of real violence in Northern Ireland. I can tell you, having been to Cork just about 5, 6 days ago, I was on a very large march there, very well attended, thousands, multiple thousands of people in Cork. It's known as the second city. Dublin is the capital, of course, and there's a very big march that will see multiple tens and tens of thousands at that event on the 22nd of this month. But one thing is clear. You're right about sowing division within the people. I think people are waking up, though, to the enablers because the enemy is within the gates. Those
Yeah.
politicians that are allowing this to happen to our countries are the ones who are facilitating it. They're the ones who need to be held accountable. And of course, I think there is a greater awareness of that happening. So those politicians that have ruled us by fear may in fact start to feel that fear in the not too distant future. I think that's simply a prediction on my part. We'll see if that actually happens. But, we remember our friends in America when they overthrew the tyranny and the revolution and the pushback, and it was only 3% of Americans that actually stood up and fought back. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
to add on that,
no, sorry, go
I
ahead.
think to add on, I think to add on to that, what we also see in Europe, of course, is that we are winning elections democratically. Of course, like we saw in the Netherlands, Geert Wilders won. People don't want more migration. People want to have control of their borders. They don't want more EU. They don't want more globalists. They want to go back to their sovereignty, to their freedoms, to their own safety. But the thing is with the globalists, and that we see that they were coming desperate and so out in the open, they are trying to sideline us. Marie Le Pen banned probably from running. There's still a
Yeah.
possibility they can overturn it, but we're not sure how likely that is. Of course, we saw how they were rigging the system during the elections in Romania. I mean, the Netherlands, Geert Wilders, he had no option. He had to let the coalition collapse because there was no way they could actually close the borders, which was the promise to the Dutch voters to begin with. So the fact that they're making all these desperate moves shows us that they know that Europe is waking up. But what needs to happen is that we need to stand up for it. Like what we saw in Ireland, when you were there for the protest of mass migration, is exactly what we need to do. We need to go, and I really want to emphasize it, peacefully protest. Let's not underestimate how strong our voices are. Remember when Nawrocki won in Poland and people went outside, all with the Polish flag, claiming Christianity? That's the
Yeah.
way we're pushing back. That needs to happen on a European level.
Yeah, and I would like to see things resolved there peacefully, but I do think people are also getting to the breaking point that they've tried that route. They've tried protesting. They've tried telling the government what they want. That they're tired of this abuse, both from the European Union and from the unfettered immigration, destroying London and Paris and other cities around Europe. That people are getting to the point where they feel like the government is against them and that they have to fight back. Now, unfortunately, I do think we're people have had enough, and you are going to see violence if things don't change soon because people feel frustrated. They feel like their voices have gone unheard for so long, and that is the only option they have left. Things have gotten so bad, they get insulted and slapped in the face over and over again. As we keep hearing these stories about, like in the UK, I heard this yesterday. Unfortunately, I don't have a slide for it. That there's promises of cutting back all this funding for the illegal aliens that are there, paying for housing and all that. That they moved them. I want to say it was like out of hotels and then gave vouchers. Do I have that right now for other places? But essentially, at the end of the day, the spending remained about the same. It's just they're moving the locations around. They're basically playing games, pretending to do something, but it's not something that'll have any net positive effect. We do have to take a break real quick, hear from our sponsors, and they'll be right back with more.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Life can be pretty unpredictable, filled with good days and not so good days. And sometimes, the only difference between the two is your level of preparedness. The Jace case lets you be better prepared for whatever comes your way. It contains antibiotics and other prescription medications so that you aren't caught unprepared. With a Jace case, you are able to get your prescription medication before the unpredictable happens, allowing you to turn those not so good days into great ones. Go to jace.com now and get your own Jace case.
Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the programs here on X America News is by supporting our sponsors. And right now, I really want to strongly encourage you guys to go to jace.com or jacemedical.com. Pick yourself up a Jace case. You can use code Insurrection for a discount. And what this is, this isn't a Band-Aid box. This isn't a little boo-boo kit. This will give your family various antibiotics, other medication that would be necessary during an emergency, as full courses of amoxicillin, Cipro, 2 courses of doxycycline, course of Z-Pak, plus non-narcotic pain relievers, prednisone, and other medication that would be essential in a time in an emergency when you can't just go to a hospital. With what we're seeing right now with the world getting set on fire, this is something I would strongly recommend you get. It's a very small investment in your family's future, especially if you have our drug supply cut off from China, or if all these riots and protests planned for this week and get totally out of control, and we do end up under martial law or something else happens. Again, go to jace.com or jacemedical.com. Use code Insurrection. You'll get an additional discount. And again, this is something I really, better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. With what's going on in the world today, this is a small investment in your safety and your family's safety. They also have other options available for specific illnesses. So please go there, use code Insurrection at jacemedical.com, and have this in place before you need it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull our next couple headlines here then, because we still got a lot to discuss, and I do want to get deeper into a few of these other stories that we've touched on. Trump warns of brutal attacks if Iran doesn't take a second chance to make nuclear deal. Well, that's already out the window, because Iran has now withdrawn from negotiations with the United States. We're starting to hear that there may be a second strike from Israel or additional strikes there. There's also a rumor circulating that U.S. and British warplanes are now encircling Israel in anticipation of mass drone strikes to help shoot down the drones as they come in. So this thing is rapidly escalating. It isn't going to just end with the 500 plus bombs that were dropped last night. I mean, this is really concerning that things could heat up very quickly here and around Europe, especially again with the open borders. We know for a fact that hundreds of terrorists crossed into the U.S. over the last 4 years. Well, we just had a report issued from the DOD within the last 48 hours that confirmed there were no checks done on everybody that was flown out of Afghanistan after the disastrous withdrawal there. And they know for a fact known terrorists were flown in among that group and then just disappeared into the United States. So one of my big concerns here and in Europe is we already have sleeper cells waiting, and that they're going to be activated now to strike whatever targets they had. Again, putting us all in danger with the hopes of basically holding the world hostage until we give in to their demands.
Yes, well, I absolutely agree. I think it's inevitable. I know you've mentioned cutting the head off the snake, and I think that needs to be done now. I've been hearing some reports coming in that there could be a planned attack to take out the leadership. They know where they are. They know how to get to them. No bunkers deep enough for the kind of ordnance that both Britain and America possess. And it may well now be the time to use it, because if they don't, they're going to continue this proxy war, funding these organizations. And we mustn't forget the globalist Soros-backed organizations that are sowing division and chaos, of course, across the American cities, attacks on Tesla leaderships and others. So I would be certainly encouraging President Trump to go after those who are funding this chaos. And George Soros and his son are heavily involved in this destabilization, not just in America, but across the entire European continent. They need to take those funders out. They need to face prosecution wherever they can and hold them to justice and set a real, true deterrent for future types of destabilization. Make it very clear, if you engage in this type of activity against the United States or our allies, you're going to pay a heavy price.
Agreed.
The problem is that it goes beyond only just sleeper cells. What we saw, for example, last year is that there were some boys recruited through TikTok, and they were actually taught how to make bombs, and they were planning on going to a Taylor Swift concert. Now imagine the damage that could have done. So the
Yeah.
issue is far worse than we had in 2015, 2016. They have become much more advanced in recruiting, especially young people. We know this is a very big issue. So we need to be very worried about that and how this will play out. And it's a
Yeah.
pity because Trump has several times warned Iran to close a deal. Otherwise, the retaliation would go beyond their wildest imagination. And Israel needs to defend itself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. I think I cut you off.
no, please, no.
Well, you're both exactly right. And I do think going after these NGOs and these other transnational, multinational, essentially money laundering organization entities and organizers for the left and for the globalists. Here, I'll just go ahead and read the headline. Is a civil conflict looming? 1,500 protests planned for Saturday to support illegal aliens. Well, it isn't just here in the U.S. These No King rallies are also planned in London, Paris, and a number of other cities throughout Europe. Now, I don't anticipate you guys would see the same level of violence that we're expecting here from these, but it shows you the reach of these entities and that this is a global movement. This isn't just something that we need to be concerned about or you need to be concerned about. The George Soros money and the other NGOs funding these, and again, let's not forget, a lot of these get their cash infusions through the European Union and through USAID until recently. That all's been cut off. And I think that's part of why we're seeing this desperate action right now is they know the gravy train's been shut down, that there's not going to be the same level of funding. And if they don't act and make their move right now, their mission is entirely lost. I think that's also a good reason to be more concerned. Because they're going to be more desperate, which means they're going to be more likely to turn to violence. I think what they really want from this coming weekend is to see the police overreact somewhere, and then they want to play victim. That they want somebody to get killed at one of these riots, protests, rallies, whatever you want to call them, and then they want to use that for sympathy and to elevate their cause.
But is that what they always do, right? I mean, you have the most important thing is what they understand is that you need to have the approval of the public. If you got their approval, you basically have a carte blanche to let this whole situation escalate. And like you said, this is exactly what they're aiming for.
Well, I very much agree with Scarlett, and I think what the scale and the scope of the infiltration and the problem is so severe that I think that President Trump might want to consider a Patriots army to support the military and the police. Those perhaps who are military veterans, who have had the training, the skills, who are known, who are vetted, may have to be brought in and used to help coordinate and control and direct all these activities, because I think it is going to require a mass purge of these far left destabilization tactics by those who are sowing chaos in our countries. And they do have to go after the leadership. They have to target those people who are responsible.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. That the key is going after the funding and the planners. All these little automatons that show up at the events out in the street without any leadership, without anybody paying for the riot shields and the face masks and delivering the pallets of bricks. They're not going to be very effective on their own. Yeah, they can make some cardboard signs. They can probably annoy some people in some cities, but without the coordination, especially to the level that we've seen in California, they're not going to be nearly as effective. I agree, too. We really do need some sort of Well, here and abroad, especially abroad, like your governments there have really let you down. They've turned on the patriots that are trying to protect your homelands, especially again in the UK, where you've got them cracking down on people for Facebook posts, ignoring the crimes from your invaders, but going after your citizens. And that's something that unfortunately here we've also seen in a lot of the blue states is this two-tier justice system. If you're on the left and you're out committing crimes, rioting, being violent, the worst you're going to get is a slap on the wrist. But if you're on the right, they're going to throw you in jail for the next 5 years, ruin your life, and go after your family. And it's getting to the point where both sides, I feel like, are in a pressure cooker right now. The left is desperate because they see their funding leaving and their opportunity to take control globally slipping away from them. And then a lot of your patriots, they're sick and tired of being harassed by corrupted governments that have gone completely into this globalist movement. And things are just all coming to a head at once. So that's kind of what makes this whole weekend so scary, at least in my books. We have multiple threats from multiple sides, and we already have these violent riots planned for the weekend.
We mustn't also forget that there is very serious intelligence coming in from multiple sources of a potential false flag attack that might provoke Russia into using a tactical nuclear weapon. We've never been so close before. And I think that there is a desire within the European elites to provoke and to continue the war effort. And of course, Zelensky is so corrupted that he will do anything to effectively stay in power. So there is a very real serious threat that there could be a false flag event takes place. We're not talking 6 months down the line. We are talking potentially within days, potentially within weeks. And we need to be aware of that too.
Well, and keep in mind, we've already seen Ukraine attempt a false flag event a while back. I mean, they got caught immediately where the missiles were fired into, was it Poland just over the border? And they were Ukrainian missiles. They immediately blamed Russia. But the whole thing, this wasn't something that had, even at the time, and it didn't get a lot of coverage, this seemed to have been something planned by Ukraine. This wasn't them taking advantage of something that happened organically. It seems that the missiles were intentionally fired there just over the border and from a position that it would have been feasible they came from Russia. But luckily they were identified. The story was debunked immediately. But the idea was to spin things up, force Poland to get involved, and then thus forcing the U.S. and the rest of NATO to get involved there. So yeah, I would have grave concern of a false flag, especially after the pounding that Ukraine's taken over the last several, week or so, since they tried to assassinate Putin, and since they went after the nuclear strike capability, the bombers, within Russian borders. I got one other slide I want to pull up, and I want to play a video for you guys real quick, and then we're going to jump to some other topics. But Florida's sheriff delivers a bone-chilling message to leftists and illegal aliens planning to riot in his county. And this, again, I don't disagree with this stance at all. I think if this is how things were getting treated in more places, we wouldn't have violence to the level we do. But I also think this is what the left is betting on, that in some states like Florida or Texas or many others, even here in Ohio, where people will defend themselves if rioting starts, that this is what they're counting on, is they want a violent conflict in the streets somewhere so they can pretend to be victims and claim that they're being oppressed by the right. So let me just go ahead and roll this real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts.
So I'm gonna break it down for you, all right? And if somebody wants to know what I mean by turn violent, all right, this is what I mean. If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired, because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street. If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have here. If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play. This has got to stop. You're watching what's taking place out there. You're seeing police officers that are being attacked, being spit on, being put in harm's way just for doing their jobs. You're seeing ICE agents that are being targeted for doing their jobs. And you're seeing obstructionists that are doing all of this, standing in the way of law and order.
You know, on one hand, I agree. What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, we're applauding him. You need to have a tough leader that stands up like that. Enough is enough. If you would have done that earlier, all those riots would not have happened. We have allowed it for way too long. And it is sad that because it is tough language, let's not deny that. It is tough
Yeah.
language, but it is needed. For way too long, the globalists have allowed a system that these riots could happen. And like you said, it's incredible bad how the agents are being mistreated. We saw, of course, the videos of the riots in LA where they were bleeding from the head for simply protecting their country and doing their job.
Well, I have to say, I've got a new favorite sheriff in town. I'll be following that gentleman very closely, and I'm also mindful of Tom Homan, who's warned Democrat senators or congressmen and women that if they help to facilitate illegal activity, they're going to be arrested. You know, things are so bad, things are so serious that we do need drastic action. Drastic measures call for drastic action. And I think in this case, if people continue to attack the police and law enforcement, ICE agents, then if they lose their lives, so be it. They've been warned many times. And I
Yep.
know that that might sound brutal, but actually our nations, our sovereignty, our culture, our faith, our identity is now at risk. It's now time to fight back. It's now time to roar like the lions that we are. For this is the age of patriots, and
Yeah.
unity is strength.
Let's not forget that there were, of course, also riots in France just, what is it, 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
And there is an officer in hospital fighting for his life. Now,
Yeah.
explain to his child that it's justified that she might grow up without a father simply because we refuse to enact the law and we allow these barbarians to attack agents who are protecting us. We cannot allow that.
Yeah, agreed and well said. And to your point, I think you're exactly right, Scarlett. That had this been done earlier and this message were sent a week ago when all this started, we wouldn't be seeing things at the level we are right now, here or abroad. And you. And Jim, if you think this guy's tough, you ought to look up the sheriff in Polk County, Florida, Grady Judd. He's right in line with him, if not better. But my concern is the left knows this too, and I do think they're really counting on something like this happening, these protests turning into riots, getting violent, and there being real action against them. Not even necessarily someone being killed, but even if you see, scenes of the police with their batons out, kettling or confining a group of protesters, and then beating the piss out of them before they put them into handcuffs. Like, that's what they're going to be looking for, is video like that they can use to make more propaganda. And that's my only concern with stuff like that, because I think you're right. If this message had been sent earlier instead of the message that it's okay to go out and burn, loot, and murder, because let's not forget, we've already had incidents in California, police being shot at. It gets no coverage. We've had one person found dead as a result of the riots. We've had hundreds and hundreds of arrests, and we've had numerous businesses burned and looted. But our media here is playing it off now like, it's not a big deal. I mean, these, again, were mostly peaceful protests. These were just people enjoying themselves around the burning cars. Think of it like a barbecue. It's pure insanity, but this is what we hear from the media, and it is to encourage more people to go out. Well, you've heard Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass out in California encourage more people to get out in the streets instead of less, and that's despite having the curfew. They're trying to prevent the National Guard from being able to act. Luckily, that's gone back and forth a few times, but as of right now, Trump's still allowed to use the National Guard to quell these riots. But I'm very concerned what's going to happen here and abroad tomorrow when these protests start.
Look, what you said, I think, is, for me, in my opinion, the root of it. When you said they didn't cover that the agents were actually shot at in LA, because that
Yeah.
is the whole point of it. If you control the narrative and you control what is being said or not said on mainstream media, on social media, this is what people will believe, and that is what will actually define reality. So it's good that you're pointing it out, Mike, and I really want to underline it again. They will try to frame this narrative in their favor so that people will feel incentivized to actually go on the streets and support these riots. And what we need to do to push back is have more information on what's actually going on real coverage, telling the stories of those agents that are making the sacrifices to protect us. And let's not forget that we can fight back if we make sure that we control the narrative.
Yes.
And
Well,
that's like, and that's what Jim always says. We have to do that in unity. We have to have those strong alliances. That's why I'm so happy to be working with you. You call me up and you tell me, okay, what's going on in Europe? And sometimes I call you up. And this
yeah.
is how we make sure that we're very fast and on point when something is happening. You need to have those alliances of patriots across the globe for the information sharing. That's the way we fight back and we push back against the globalists.
And we are winning the information war thanks to great
Yes.
shows like yours, thanks to the amazing work that Scarlett Karoleva does, thanks to all of us in the independent media, because we are the ones who are providing the facts, getting to
Yes.
the root of it, and that's why we have the followings that we have. But I think, once again, it's all very well to talk about it, but sometimes there comes a point where we need to take action. And I would
Yes.
encourage President Trump to stand firm along with his administration and do what needs to be done. And it takes a bold leader to do that. Whether we're talking Israel, whether we're talking America, the United Kingdom, we are strong allies together. We need to focus on all of that and put a stop to it, because we cannot allow our countries to be burned to the ground.
Well said, Jim. I think you're exactly right. The media is irrelevant now. People are waking up to it, and it is because of independent media outlets and just people's unwillingness to believe to believe the lies anymore, that they can see what's going on with their own eyes. But you're exactly right. We need to stand firm. We can't compromise our values or let them gain any ground right now. This is a battle against good and evil, and this is a fight for the future of humanity that we are in right now, and we are at a very pivotal moment. We've got to take one more quick break, hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more.
Well, hello everybody, it's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. But I'm sure for this, I hope I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the programs on Next American News is by supporting our sponsors. And you can do that by going to lutfstudio.com, buy yourself a unique, one-of-a-kind, handmade piece of art from Annie Cyrus. I also really want to encourage you to go to her Substack right now. With what just went down between Israel and Iran, she's going to have a lot to say, rest assured. And her Substack is the best place to find that. And you can check out her program here on Ex American News, Live Up to Freedom, or catch her as she co-hosts with Miriam Shaw on, I just blanked out on the name of Miriam's show on, well, that brain cell's dead. All right. I want to go ahead and dive into, I'm sorry, Miriam, Mission for Freedom. Sorry, man. I was up way too late last night watching all this stuff unfold. But I do want to dive into this story. We touched on this earlier. Sex crimes sparked 3 nights of anti-immigration riots in Northern Ireland. And I feel like this is something that really has not gotten the attention it deserves here in the U.S. And our media is largely ignoring what sparked all this. So, Jim, would you be able to give us a little background on what brought this to the forefront and then what's happening now in Ireland?
Well, there are 3 things I really want to point out. First of all, Sinn Féin are globalists. They are destroying the Irish national identity, culture. They were the political arm of the IRA. And a lot of people in America think by supporting Sinn Féin, you're helping the Irish cause. You're absolutely not. But first, the second point I would also make is this. The Northern Irish and the Southern Irish are now starting to march together. You're seeing the same flags being flown. We would never have thought we would have seen this 20, 30, 40 years ago. It would have been impossible. But
Yeah.
now they recognize and understand that there is a common enemy. The common enemies are the globalists. And they're putting their faith and their differences aside, because this is the time for unity. This is the time for people to come together. I went to the march in Cork, attended by many thousands of people. But what happened in Northern Ireland, in Ballymena, was on a whole other scale. We
Yeah.
saw the brutal rape of young teenage girls by those who were not indigenous to the country, shall we say.
Yeah.
We're talking about a mattress in the garage. We're talking about sexually assaulted by these three males. It's caused a very serious violence. Now, it's important to point out that in Ballymena, 16% of people are not indigenous for the Irish. That's a very high percentage. The other
Yeah.
important thing to remember is this, that the indigenous population of Ireland is actually only 3 million Irish. But actually, that population has been increased to 5 million within just the last 4 years. The
That's
Irish are almost now at
insane.
It's true. That's absolutely true. And there is now serious violence. Now, we've seen the third night of violence. What the security services and the police will tell you is that if something goes on for more than 3 nights, then it's really serious. And I suspect we're going to see more attacks.
Yeah, but we saw, of course. Okay, so what actually sparked this, because to go back to your question, is of course the violation of a young girl by two guys that are from Romania. They're aged 14. They're standing trial right now. We absolutely condemn all of the violence that got involved with it, but we have to look at the root cause. It is that people are feeling neglected. They have been begging. They have been begging their government to listen to them. They
Yes.
were at the riots or like the protest, peaceful protest last week in Cork. I went to Dublin myself. I did their documentary about how mass migration is changing the whole social cohesion, but also the beauty of and beauty of Ireland. Because let's not forget, Irish people are extremely open, welcoming, but they have been pushed to the limit up to the point that they have become third citizens within their own country, and
Yes.
people are fed up with that. So this is, like we say in the Netherlands, it's a little drip that makes the emmer flow over. Enough is enough. And you know what? If their politicians would have listened a long time ago, they would have closed their borders. They would not have let unvetted men in inside of the country who are living like kings and not contributing, while hardworking people are having to work double shifts just in order to provide for their families. And I'm not even talking about the increase in criminality, because I work, for example, very closely with Crip Media. They are a wonderful channel in Ireland that are talking about what is happening out there. And one of the great ladies that I'm working with, her name is Fatima. I want to give a shout out to her. She's telling me how she's not feeling safe at night anymore being a woman in Ireland.
Well,
These women have been neglected for way too long. And
Yeah.
of course, the fact that it got escalated as badly as it is, yes, we do not agree with that, and that is something we condone. But people are fed up. This is a cry for help. If this doesn't shake up the politicians, then I don't know what is anymore.
32 police officers were very seriously hurt. And of course, that's never good to see. But
No.
once again, when the people realize that the real people, the people who are actually facilitating this by design, doing it quite deliberately to their own people, the politicians,
Yeah.
once they realize en masse that they're the ones who are actually responsible for this, then, well, maybe they'll be the ones who will be targeted. Of course, we don't condemn violence at all. Scarlett is absolutely right. We're peaceful. But I think it's probably inevitable. And just a few weeks ago, an advisor to the government in the United Kingdom warned that the UK was heading towards potentially civil war.
Yeah, and it's something we've been hearing here for a while. Paul Joseph Watson put out a great video just a couple weeks ago regarding the safety of women, both in the UK and Ireland, where it was showing, their own videos of people being attacked, or women being attacked or harassed in the street. And again, just highlighting that they don't feel safe in their own country anymore. They can't walk to work. They can't go anywhere. and it's for a variety of reasons, but they're all lead back to this unfettered immigration, this invasion, breaking down social cohesion, as you said, Scarlett, that it doesn't feel like home anymore. They feel like foreigners in their own land instead of the other way around. And things have just gotten to the breaking point that this last incident, this rape in Northern Ireland, kind of, to me at least, it looks like it lit the fuse. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was one too many, and you just had the tension just explode there. But I think you're right. You're going to see this in more places because of the government's inaction. Or we see these stories over and over again with, some African migrant is arrested for rape. They get a slap on the wrist. They get 3 months in jail and a little bit of probation. They'll have to pay a €500 fine. I just watched this with a bunch of the rioters in France, where there are charges, even though there were assaults, people put in the hospital and other stuff, and said their charges are basically dismissed. Maybe not literally, but the penalties are, and instead they're paying a €500 fine. And the native population is just sick of this. They're sick of the lack of enforcement, that this is encouraged. These people are coddled, protected, and everything else. And as you said, the natives can barely afford to put food on the table. Things are getting worse and worse when they know these people are getting a free ride on their paychecks. And they've just had it. That if there isn't immediate change, you probably are going to see a civil war in multiple nations, or at the very least, you're going to see fighting in the street and pushback because people are sick and tired of this and sick and tired of their government ignoring their concerns.
Look, in Ireland, the guys that come in, they have been through 6, 7 safe countries. If you're really a refugee, you just stick on the first country. You're happy
Yeah.
if you're having a roof above your head and just a meal, because that's all you need if you're truly a refugee. You don't go through 6, 7 countries just to go to Ireland, because they know in Ireland there's an open border policy. You get everything for free from the government. For a while, there were people that had to live in tents, and now what's happening? They actually want to get a reimbursement because they were not provided with a luxury hotel. That's what I saw a lot when I was in Ireland. Just the top A locations turned into, well, sort of hostel, but very luxurious hostels for these
Yeah.
immigrants. And how much does it cost? Because the same thing is happening in the Netherlands. It's €70 a night. You know what? If you calculate it a month, that is €2,100. I don't know anyone, even though I have friends that are very hardworking,
Yeah.
who can allow themselves to pay that amount of money, €2,100, just for the sake of accommodation. And I'm not even talking about gas, electricity. Another story that I want to tell is that I had the pleasure to meet a gentleman. He came from a hard shift from working hard. We met in an Irish pub. Of course, we had a Guinness because gotta
Yeah. Yeah.
respect the culture.
Of
And
course. Of
he was
course.
of course. And he knew the bartender, and the bartender was like, "Oh, you're so well acquainted here." I said, "Yeah, because I work with the bartender." And then I said, "But you just had a full day of work." He said, "Yeah, but he's working an extra shift just to make meets end." And then as we
Yeah.
were walking around, of course, he was showing me and he was telling me more about how mass migration is affecting Ireland. And he says, you see men, young unvetted men from Somali, doing everything the Quran has prohibited, drinking, smoking, and whatever, and
Yeah.
they're just doing nothing to benefit back for the community, and that is such a slap in the face. And now on top of that comes also, because that's one thing, right? The fact that they're taking all of the social stabilities, which is taking social stability from the people that have worked for it, but it goes beyond that. The increase of criminality, the fact that they're legitimizing, that they're using aggression, that is what is people
Yeah.
are saying, okay, enough is enough. And they don't
Yeah.
want to do anything about it. Me coming in the Netherlands, we have this place, Utrecht. It's a city in the center of the country. And there's this area where a lot of young men that are underage, they are illegal immigrants. They
Yeah.
just walk around, they don't go to school, they smoke weed, they are harassing the restaurants and the people working in those restaurants around the area. And the council and the city council is not doing anything about it because, oh yeah, they're illegal immigrants and there are minors. Well, guess what? If you would have done it in their home country, you would have been sent right back, and you would even think about doing all of those illegal activities. But we are allowing it and we're facilitating it, and I totally understand that the people of Ireland are saying this is where we draw the line.
The
Yeah.
first duty of any government is to protect its citizens. And our
Yes.
governments across the entire European continent have utterly failed that. So I think it is time to look at things differently. It's time to say, look, we've allowed them to do this. This needs to stop right now. And I would be looking to America, to our friends and allies and fellow patriots of the United States, in light of what's going on there, to lead the way. I think President Trump is the man to do it, and he has a huge support base, not just in America, but actually around the world as well. Let's see some real leadership for a change, and we will follow him.
Agreed. I think the time for change is now. And I've got one last story I want to touch on that you sent over that we kind of, we barely touched on it earlier, but let's dig just a little deeper. Today we disperse a new $1 billion euros to Ukraine, bringing our total support to almost 150 billion euros since Russia's full-scale invasion. We are with Ukraine for the long haul. Are you guys excited that more of your tax dollars are going to go to fund the endless war in Ukraine, especially, right now, well, so clearly that this should be over?
I am laughing because this is so ridiculous. When I saw this thing, I had to think of that clip where Zelensky is saying about the billions they received from the United States, and apparently 100 billion was lost. Interesting. What happened to that 100 billion? Why don't we hear anything about it? Where is that money going to? Like I said, once again, there is no control on where that money is funneling into. We know how corrupt Zelensky is, and this is just further escalation. And especially now with Mark Rutte on the top as the Secretary General of NATO, him saying that at what cost Ukraine will be part of NATO if we don't fix the war before this will happen, and it will happen, unfortunately. They have the winning hand in this.
Yep.
Ukraine will become part of NATO. We have a third world war country. This goes beyond the loss of money, because corruption is one thing, but this will actually eventually even lead to loss of more lives. This is
Yeah.
a never ending war. Ukraine can't win it, but we keep funneling it. And I think also this is one of the reasons why Zelensky has this arrogance, because he knows he gets away with everything and he will still have support from the European Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, watch out for the false flag. We've talked about it already, but watch out because that's coming if it's allowed.
Now, unfortunately, I think you're probably right about that we are going to see some kind of a false flag operation there. The globalists want war. They wanted to expand to more countries across Europe. I think this is for a variety of reasons. Not just because they'll line their own pockets, but also because of the level of debt and the social instability in so many countries. They think war can be a unifying factor, which it has in the past. But again, it's not for, this isn't a legitimate conflict, a legitimate war. I mean, it is for Ukraine defending their borders, but at this point, the battle's over. It's already been lost. If not for the billions of dollars in equipment sent from the United States, various countries in Europe, and around the world, they would have surrendered a long time ago. But you're right that the message has been sent to Zelensky that as long as he continues to stand, continues to fight, that they'll continue to flood the country with money. But I don't think there's enough left anymore, or enough weapons, or enough boots on the ground. I mean, you basically slaughtered an entire generation of Ukrainians. Their country's going to be crippled going forward because of it. But for whatever reason, the European Union and these globalists only want more. We're unfortunately about out of time, but real quick, what is the best place for our audience to find both of you?
Well, you can follow me on X at Scarlett. And Mike, I just want to say thank you once again so much for having us on the channel. Really, this is all what it's about. If we continue working like this together, it's game over for the globalists.
Oh,
Yeah.
I echo those sentiments entirely. And you can find me at Jim Ferguson UK, and go to freedomtraininternational.org to learn everything you need to know about how to prepare for what's coming next. We've got extensive guides and books worth of information on there. So thank you once again. God bless you. Keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. Unity is strength, and we're patriots together.
Well, thank you both for being here. And again, that's, you said Freedom Train International, right?
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to get that link out there to everybody here right after the program. And again, thank you to both of you for being here. And we'll have to follow up again next week, especially after the weekend, because something's going to unfold this weekend. I've got a bad feeling about it. Guys, if you're here in the U.S. or if you're anywhere where these protests or rallies are going to be taking place around the world, I actually want to encourage all of you to attend. See if there's a patriot group or a pro-Trump group that's going to be doing a counter-protest at these. Go there. Be peaceful unless you're attacked. Make sure you bring cameras, document, coordinate, because again, we have to do the job the media refuses to do. We need to show just how violent these insane, rabid leftist lunatics are getting. We have to be able to counter the media narrative, because they're going to pretend that these are peaceful protests, except where Trump's Gestapo got involved and beat them to the ground. So we need to be out there making sure this false narrative can't be spread. And we also need to be protecting our communities. So especially if there is going to be a patriot group doing a counter protest, please attend, be safe. You got body armor, I'd wear it. If you've got a gas mask, I'd bring it. Be prepared, but at the same time, don't participate in any violence whatsoever, but defend yourself if you are attacked. To our audience, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news. The mainstream media doesn't want you